why do you have a giant thing of Yoo-hoo?
People usually think it's coffee.
Yeah.
Nobody's guessed Yoo-hoo.
No, Yoo-hoo.
It does look like you. I forgot about Yoo-hoo. Well, the podcast is ridiculous.
You should put a big piece of celery in it too, so people think it's like a weird Bloody Mary or so.
Have you watched like real news people since podcasts have been a thing? Like a guy with like teeth that are too white and like weird hair, and he's got everything's like
no,
that's what's weird.
Yeah.
This is
totally normal.
This is how people are.
Yeah.
It's leaning into how things really are.
Yeah.
Like I was at the doctor and I was like watching like a morning show where they had like the cameras and everyone's like, it's like a perfectly like ethically balanced group of people just being like, here's a dude. And I'm just like, this is so fake now. But,
we got to start over.
Yeah, well, we probably haven't started yet. I don't know. I always say that, but then I just leave it all in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny when you hear other people's podcasts. My buddy Chaz, they always say, like, they even have like a marker that says to go back and edit that part, but it's always in there. So
yeah.
It's like whoever's editing it's just like, eh.
Well, the way I look at it, if I acknowledge that I should have edited it, then that's enough.
Yeah.
I go, I'll edit that out. That's me saying, I'm aware that I shouldn't have said that, and then I just leave it at. You know?
Well, it's very casual. I'm loving the podcast, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I think it's great. It's nice to just have a new one where I'm like excited when an episode comes out, and I can. Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Like when I did it with you, I was really 50-50 about whether it would ever, and I even kind of sat on it for a while. So whatever happened with us, this is 13. This is the 13th time.
This will be the last one. The first and the last.
The bookends.
Like that guy.
The first time he made me want to start a podcast. The second time I decided to quit.
Just ruined the whole thing. Yeah. But I think it's a weird thing too with podcasting of like knowing how much to edit it and not, or whether to edit it at all.
Yeah, I'm trying to go towards none because then I can just throw them up.
Yeah, but I feel like I don't hear cut points in yours at all. Like I don't know how much you actually are editing it or not. You're a good music producer guy, so you're probably pretty good. I think that helps over a lot of people that podcast that don't have that music recording background and stuff. So,
and a few of my early ones are terrible because after episode 1 I switched to those Bluetooth mics, so I've been going back and editing those, but then I'm like, man, those three guests just kind of got shitty audio.
It took me like a year and a half, and I should have known better. But we, just tried different formats with the long distance stuff. Have you ever thought about doing any of that? I will
never do a virtual one. I can't. Yeah, I work virtually, and I just.
What if you get some amazing comedian that's like, I'll do your show, but I got to zoom in?
I don't think I mean, I just don't have any interest in doing virtual. Yeah. I work virtually. And I fucking hate it. And the little, for me, it's like the jam. This is, this is a jam.
I've heard about the jam. Know the jam.
But I wouldn't jam with you over the fucking internet with all those like little delays. It's
True.
like the vibe is all about this, It's all about, it's really just about the hang and then trying to like capture the hang. But I mean, different podcasts are different. I'm just saying this one, that's kind of the only thing it really is. Yeah. There's no famous people.
No.
It's just like, we're hanging out. It's like, you're not even hanging out and it's nobody you've heard of.
Like. And I've even gotten that way with the Cure stuff that I do where I think a lot of people think it's supposed to lean towards interviews and getting, the big name guys. I'm like, it's more about talking about the Cure, than like getting, I mean, we do that occasionally, but that's why I don't really rely, even if it is somebody, I'd rather just talk to them about the Cure. Like a conversation you're capturing more than an interview.
Right. This is definitely a conversation, not an interview.
Yeah.
Because then it's like we both can interrupt each other. Yeah. We can go on. An interview means I'm like responsible for
you're like, tell me about the beginning.
Inside the actor's studio. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of that comes out. And
so yours is more of like conversation too. More
I
like
think so. Yeah. And then whether other people see it that way or not, I don't know. But
how many episodes have you done?
200 and well, it's kind of off now because it's like 241 is the newest one. But then when they did their latest tour, which was about 15 episodes at least, where I just called them the tour episode. I didn't count them as numbers for some reason. I just thought they'd be grouped together better if it was like tour related. So really, it's past 250 easy. So yeah, it's been going a while.
Yeah,
somehow.
it's like it's almost a decade.
Yeah,
right?
it'll be 9 years this summer.
Whoa!
I started in the summer in 2015, and that kind of went where I wasn't doing it every other week. So it was kind of like when I could do it, and I was still kind of feeling it out too, because everybody was distant. That was the idea too. I didn't want to phone in or do Zoom. Definitely not Zoom right off the bat, because I thought it really stunk around 2015. Everything was glitchy, and
right.
So we just did phone calls a lot because the other co-hosts even weren't here. So I had to call somebody, and that worked. But then eventually, with since COVID times, it's you kind of had to do the Zoom, and I think the quality improved, and I just got used to it more. So now it's easier. You can just sit in your house, and they can sit in their house. You don't have to wait for them to travel to North Carolina to talk to them. So
it's definitely easier for sure.
So yeah, I like that, and I figured out there's a button where you can isolate their tracks. When they record, you just get their file, so I can still edit it. Or if they're too quiet or anything, I can boost it, or so that helps.
Yeah. So you think you'll be able to just go forever talking about The Cure for another?
Probably.
I mean,
it gets moments where even I'm kind of like, all right, what are we doing here? I always initially said we'd quit when the band breaks up, but that was kind of with the idea of thinking they're probably going to break up fairly soon. They'll be done. How long can they go? But I think there's still plenty to talk to, and as long as the enthusiasm's there, I'm still. There's tons of surprisingly topics. There's anniversaries coming up now, which make it good. Or I can always talk about an album that we already talked about, but now it's the 40th anniversary or the 30th anniversary. And so there's always something and new angles, and everything like music. Your opinions even change if I listen back to something. I don't know if you found that yet, where you even feel like your opinion you get rambling on podcasts and shit. You're just
I usually say that to guests. It's like, you're encouraged to contradict yourself. Like, just say things that are like, I'll tell you about this shit, and then the next week I listen back, I'm like, I don't even feel that way. Like, that's what it is. That's exactly why it's also not the news, because the news is like factual information with charts. This is like, it's what you're feeling.
Yeah, it's off the top of your head. And I like that too, with like music theory kind of stuff, where you just, a lot of times you'll get that idea while somebody's talking about something like, oh yeah, I never thought of that song that way, or the way they are doing comedy, I'm sure, or something. And then you just kind of get the spark of the idea and run with it. 2 hours later, you're like, that's probably not 100% true, but but that's part of the fun.
Did you delete the part where I no?
As long as that's where the editing comes in handy. That's where I'm like, I swear I edit myself like 90% more than I don't really like to.
I'm the same. I if anything, I feel like I just talk too much, or I'm like, hey, how's your process changed? But it takes me a minute to ask it. So
the question.
But I'm hoping that I'm getting better at interviewing, so there'll be less of that, because I'm trying to build it so it's like, this could be up. I pick where it starts, and then I pick where it ends, and then you just throw it up. And I'm really trying to build it so it is like,
I
think your podcast is more like you edit it, and I listen to I love that too. But this one is just like not a. It might eventually become that way, but I kind of like just the quick, easy, just a couple assholes talking about whatever. Throw it up. What else is there?
My only advice would be you should milk the episodes more and like stretch them out. Maybe once you get into the more, you could be like, man, I could just do like one a month, and you don't even have to do another one for like the next. See, that's talking from the guy that's done it for like 9 years now. I'm like, just stretch it out, man. You don't have to.
By stretch it out, you mean don't put them up as much?
Yeah, it's fast.
No, but I like doing them. I want to do one every week.
That's what I mean. But if you get to the point, because then if you get like some of that cancels or something, and you're like, oh crap, I don't have one.
We've had some of that. Fucking comedians. You ever tried to get them to work a calendar and show up?
Yes, I love it. Like anything I like, I'd much rather have more of it, and then I'll just get to it at my own pace, which I think is good too. But
you're on like a structured schedule, and you're kind of like paying homage to like the legacy of a. There's like I imagine there's probably some weight to where you're like talking about your favorite band in that community, so you have some responsibility to like.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like.
I guess,
how many fans? This
Asheville
is not about any
comedy scene. I think everyone's, you got to represent. But yeah, I mean, I had early complaints when we started the podcast of like, talking about the Cure's a sacred thing. You guys need to take it more serious, because real early on we were like super fucking goofy. I say we, but
I can see that.
but and I do too.
But
but
you're editing yourself out. That was the problem.
Yeah, I know. I should have been editing some other one. But yeah, it was and it was. But I'm not a big talker. That's the thing too. I'm like pretty shy dude, which is weird. But if it's something that's fun or talking to a friend, I'll ramble on for 250 episodes.
Yeah.
But, to get me to that point, I was, definitely trash for the first few episodes, first 100 or so, and just talking with my friends, you get all excited. And that's kind of like going to the idea of like.
You're going on the record saying you were drunk like for all the first.
Oh, yeah. Still most of them, but like.
Do your listeners know?
Yeah, I think they could tell. But I've definitely backed that off, because it's like playing music where you have to, there's a thin line between, because that's the catch.
And sloppy.
Yeah, because there's a catch between.
Talking to some big producer, you're like,
no, fuck that. The best part. It's like, what? But, because, it's like playing music where you got to get loose, but then the one thing nobody wants to listen to a drunk person. Like if you're in your car driving to work, you don't want to hear two drunk assholes being like,
it's like 8 a.m. You're like, wow.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to quit drinking now. So I do appreciate
I've
this.
Inspired so many Cure fans to stop drinking. Yeah.
Are they a bunch of drunks, or are they more into like, antidepressants and stuff?
I'd say they all be total drunks.
Anxiety.
Yeah, that too.
I mean,
total drunks. If anything, they've just gotten so drunk that they don't do it anymore. I think that's probably because we're all getting older,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough line, because I think a lot of things flow easier. It's easy. I'm sure the comedy world, do you find that a lot of people either get too drunk or not drunk enough?
Well, that's the nice thing about doing things this time of day. I did one. Nobody's drunk at noon.
Not here so much, but like we show up to your house and trash.
And I did do one later at night, and there was some drinking, and there was some
that's
what am I? Yeah. What was the question?
I guess with actual in the clubs and stuff, is it pretty obvious, I guess, coming from someone now that doesn't hit it as hard?
A lot of people in the comedy scene have quit drinking because they've been out at the bars and they've all got emotional problems and stuff, because they're comedians. But then a lot of the people that are younger now, they're just doing like all the weed and vapes. So it's kind of not as much as you like. It's really been a while since I've like had to stand next to somebody who's like shouting with like the IPA just coming up. When like you're not drinking IPAs and it's just coming out of their fucking every hole in their head, and they're just like yelling. It's always like starts with a compliment, dude. You're funny. Yeah, so I got some ideas. You're like, oh fuck,
here we go.
But it's not really been that much of an issue. I feel like
I guess it's tough.
Kind of weird because
talking is tough, and that's kind of the thing I hit with podcasting while being drunk is like you're trying to read some notes, like and shit. You're trying to keep the conversation flowing. It's hard to do. Like even more so than just playing music, you kind of have it rehearsed, hopefully, and you can kind of get up there and get into the groove with it more, as opposed to like actual words and saying shit. If you're up there like having the best time, but you're all slurred, everyone's like, what is this dude doing? So that would be tough, I'd imagine. But
I mean, I think comedians are really good talkers, or they ought to be. So it kind of helps with podcasting, as far as like. And I guess you were saying like at a show you'd play the actual song, whereas this is more like jamming. This is more like on your podcast. Does it stay pretty structured like or is it kind of like when you do with your co-hosts, you just kind of like hang out and see what happens, or be like, we're just gonna riff on this topic?
It's definitely gotten more like sometimes if we have a guest, like somebody that isn't regularly on there, they'll ask if there's an outline or something, and I usually do type up an outline now, just to have it for myself, but it usually goes off in the first 5 seconds, and then I'm just kind of.
But just having
by writing the notes, it gets the ideas kind of
right.
in
That's
my head.
That's what I was going to say.
So it's kind of just a safety
net. You
net.
took the time to like think about it in advance, and then even if you don't look at it, you gotta.
Then you can bounce back when it hits that first and that's where I hit edit, and then I
like the lulls too, though. Like I love it on a podcast when there's just like a little silence.
Yeah, it can be a little tough. This is why I don't do comedy, guys. but yeah, and I think, and a lot of times with like music stuff, I do try to keep it informative to a certain degree. I figure if anybody's really listening to it, they know pretty much the bare bones of the Cure history kind of stuff. But sometimes rattling off like numbers or something and all that stuff you got to write out, or the list of the songs that we're referring to, this genre of something, So.
Have some visual aids, because I'd imagine like. Your listeners must be like hardcore fans, because it's not the type of podcast where you just be like, oh, let's just dabble in. It seems like it is probably. I mean, and maybe all podcasts are like that to some degree, but it seems like it's like pretty niche, which I've actually heard is smarter because there's so many podcasts that it is better to like say this is our niche and it's about this. It's to be like it's me and my buddy hanging out. It's like, well, everybody and their buddy hanging out as a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally thought that, and I did the podcast with our friend Craig really early on around the same time, and that was like going at the same time almost more fun because it was more just us shooting the shit and doing like rando topics, but it was like every episode we'd both pick 3 things and just like whether it be a comic or a book or an album, so it was just so like all over the place, though I couldn't figure out how to get it out there.
Right.
It wasn't like with the Cure stuff, you can always just drop the link in a Cure Facebook group, and you might catch somebody new. You just see the Instagram post and they're like, oh, what is this? A Cure podcast. It's like you're already in. I'm using the Cure's fan base basically as the topic.
Yeah.
But when it's just, rando topics, I couldn't really.
Yeah, how would anyone ever find it? I guess the idea for this experiment is that like since there's a different guest each time, it could kind of be like
their friends.
Yeah, so you might be
hopefully.
Like, but I mean, it's okay if that doesn't work. I mean, really the idea is like I only talk to people I'm like really sincerely interested in talking to, and usually asking a bunch of questions. But then as far as like how would you find it? I was like, well, let's do like 100 and see like if just the fact that each. There's like maybe you pick up like one person per episode of somebody else's friend. Maybe it could aggregate that way.
I think that's a lot of it. What it is like so much of podcast that I listen to is like if the person doesn't annoy you, which I probably annoyed a lot of people early on, but like hopefully the goal is you don't bug the people and then they just kind of like hearing what you're talking about. Then it doesn't even really become about Cure history so much. It's like, he kind of likes some stuff I like and I'll listen to it. I'm not really into the Asheville comedy scene, knowing every person that much, is it? But I like hearing yours now because I like talking to you, and you're, and then by hearing that, it makes me like them, and I've already even friended them or the Instagrams or whatever, some of the comedians there, and follow. That's it. Friended. I'm their friends.
Yeah, friends is bi-directional. Follow is one way.
Yeah. Didn't MySpace have something even weirder? Was it like?
I think it was like
I guess you would rate the friends. That was the weird thing on MySpace. You had to put your top 5 friends, and everyone's just like, what the fuck? I'm not in the top 5 anymore.
Still got Tom up there. How come I'm not? I was at your wedding.
And people would just take a stance. I don't put anybody up there. It was always this
I only put Tom.
Yeah. So, but it's cool. I think in that regards of listening to podcasts, if they don't bug you, you kind of like the topic. Because even like you're saying with the Cure stuff of how die hard of a fan, I think you have to care enough about the band to find it first. But I'm always a little surprised when people are like, that's cool you said that, I didn't know that. I'm kind of like, whoa, that's like Cure 101 kind of thing. I'd never like shame them or anything, because there's a lot of that with
you fucking idiot. You didn't.
But at the same time, I'm like, oh, well, that's cool. That means it's not just the uber nerds listening to it. It's people that just we've even had guests on where they're kind of like drawing a blank if I'm...
People are like 2 hours into the podcast and like, oh, is Robert Smith the principal songwriter?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, but
how did you
which
find
is cool. This? So yeah, if you did get that deep, not knowing that's great, because then I'm like, well, I got a ton of
Maybe
shit.
some people just aren't like, I mean, I'm a liner note reader since day one for that, so I just assume everyone to this day when I like find one new song by a band, I hop over to Wikipedia and I'm like, all right, where are they from? What's the years? Is it? I just like I enjoy that, whereas maybe some people are just like, I like the songs,
Yeah, and maybe in their defense, I find it's a lot of the younger fans don't have a lot of that kind of nerdier side of knowledge because there aren't really liner notes. I mean, most of the people I talk to will eventually find the records of the CDs and dive into it, but for the most part, they're just streaming it, and you don't get to see who the engineer on this one album was back in 1984. And they're just
bombarded with so much information every time they go do anything, so maybe there's not as much space for the younger generation to, just to get the case and the booklet, or it's like you used to kind of have to work hard to get the info, so maybe it was more valuable. Maybe now it's like,
and we did it when we cared and we're younger more, so that kind of sticks in your head a lot more than some like 30-year-old dude now that's getting like their whole back catalog. You'd read it and be like, cool, but you're not really like studying it or anything like we probably did with it's more interesting than doing schoolwork is studying the liner notes, so it's pretty cool. I like that there's multi-layers to it.
Yeah. See, I had something else that I wanted during all that I wanted to ask, but it's gone now.
Oh, well.
I'm not going to edit that out. Yeah, I guess like podcasts are such a broad thing. And, I mean, there's like This American Life. What was the name of that clockmaker guy, that really big one, the S-Town?
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, I mean, it's basically like, not only is there like music and different narrations and transitions, but it's like a very complex piece of audio.
Yeah.
And then there's the ones where they just hit record and they just talk and then it just ends.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like even the fact that we're calling them one word, like podcast to me kind of seems
weird.
like it's mutated enough, because what you're saying about finding people, like that's kind of how I navigate podcasts. Is I'm like, oh, one of my favorite comedians is putting out a special, so that means they'll be on all the podcasts this month to promote it. And then you just type their name into Spotify, and then you end up finding like all these, like WTF is like the big one, That's my favorite of the two big ones.
Yeah.
But then you get used to like hearing Mark Maron talk, and then you start listening to other people on his podcast, and then it's kind of like I spend probably 90% of them is like two people talking, and one of them's like they're like promoting something, but then they get into like hopefully their writing process, because that's what I really love. But a lot of times it's like their childhood and shit like that, and you do, like, if you spend enough hours with someone's voice in your head, it really does. Like, there's people who I didn't really like their comedy, but then if you listen to them talk for 50 hours, you're watching their comedy and you're going like, I feel like I'm pretty close to this person now, because like I've heard them talk more than like my dad in the last few years. So now I'm not even necessarily laughing at their jokes, but I do have an investment in
their train of thought, even, and just seeing how they
because we all have voices in our head. It's like if you listen to somebody enough, you'll kind of start to almost get a little bit of that going on.
Especially if it's a more kind of casual talking kind of, and there isn't like a strict thing that they're doing each episode. And I think it hits the same, scratches the same itch as, like we're saying, going through the liner notes now of, like, when you hear, a podcast or an episode, they mention something or a movie even or something, then you go check it out because of that. It's all these little doors that get opened without just blindly going into Spotify or YouTube or something, so it's like, oh yeah, that would be worth checking out, or just that person in general is pretty cool. So.
It's kind of like when you meet somebody new and then you like hang out and you're like, oh, I think I want to see them again. I think I might. It's like, I think I'd like to hear that person's voice. It's like a few days later and you're like, I kind of like to hear them talk some more, and not even necessarily about. I mean, this is all so new. It's like, what are we even becoming as a species? You're spending like tons of hours. Like, well, I know that if I listen to my own thoughts, that gets awfully painful. So I find some voices that I like this week, and I'm just walking around downtown listening to like two people talking. But
I think that's why I like it so much too, is because, like you're saying, it is such a broad thing. Podcasting is like music almost at this point or something, because it's like you have the super polished ones that you listen to, and then like the lo-fi indie stuff is like the one of just two people hitting record. And I know I have like my save podcast of like ones I just kind of bounce back and forth a lot. Sometimes you just want to hear something that sounds a little more like just two dudes, not very professional, maybe a little too drunk, talking in the mics or something, and then you're like, all right, well, I really want to hear what this Oscar-winning actor has to say, so I'll listen to the fancy one for that, or something that's like more of like an actual reported news story, This American Life kind of thing, or something. But yeah, it's so many different genres of it. It really should come up with. I guess maybe not. Genres are stupid. But,
do you have podcasts that you kind of look to kind of model your own one after? Like, is there something that you feel like... There weren't
really. That's what was weird. And I still think there's a huge shortage of, like, specific band ones, Like, they've started to pop up. There usually are, like, super rough, like, where even the two people talking about don't even know about the bands and stuff. And they can be painful. But, yeah, I would love to listen to more, just, like, any band, like the all freaking Buffalo Tom podcast. That'd be good. It's like, wow, okay, you're going there. That'd be great. I mean, I love those. There's a lot of music ones that are like that, where they kind of wrangle it down to genres or eras of music or something. But I'm
afraid to find new ones at this point because I don't have enough time. But for me, like a 3-hour band's playing, will be like, I think that's probably about all I really need on a band. But I guess if your taste changed, you start to think you wouldn't like something, but then if you find yourself coming back week after week, you can kind of, it's like a show or something.
True.
I mean, it is a show. It's like
and it's weird because you do even get burnt out on ones you like. I've definitely had that where it's kind of sad. I'm starting to be like, oh man, I don't care now. That's like,
I usually have one that I'm really excited about for a few months, and then I'm kind of like, I'll keep checking it to see if my favorite person in the world is on. But it's kind of like I've just moved on. That's why I try not to take it too hard, because there's been people that I talk with a lot with the Cure podcast, like for like a year or something, and they just kind of like fade out. I'm like, did I piss them off or something? Did I get a fact wrong? I thought we were forever.
It's like going back through my notes. I was like, I think I'm pretty accurate here, but they're like, no, done. But I just figured they'll come back at some point if they care. I've definitely come back to a few too.
For sure.
And a lot of it too, like,
and then you have more episodes. You take a year off, and you're like, oh, cool. Now I can like pick the ones that look the best.
Do you have podcasts where you are all scanned just based on the topic? Like a lot of the ones where they're like interview based. Like there's old skateboarder ones where I'm only really listening to the ones where I know who they're talking to and stuff.
Yeah, that's almost always the case.
Mark Maron or something. I'm like, I don't care.
I mean, there's so many. I basically have like my 5 to 10 that I love, and I'm like, are they talking with somebody or about a band that's my favorite? And then I'll give it a go. But I do get kind of just sick of people sometimes. But every now and then I'll just get excited about a new one. Like there's this comedian named Mike Birbiglia that I just got into it. So I was actually embracing like listening to the ones with people I didn't know. Because sometimes I'll be like, well, all I'm doing is reinforcing the people I like. So it actually is cool to go find some new people,
Yeah. It's a good way to test it, though. If you know you're going to like the guest or the topic, then you'll listen to that one first. And if that's what I always tell people with our Cure one, too. It's like, well, listen to the album ones first. If you don't like what we're saying about disintegration, then you're definitely not going to like what we talk about as shoes or something. So just start out with the one everybody's going to get something out of, hopefully. And if you don't, then cool, find the other ones.
There has been this thing where, like, when I listen to podcasts, there'll be a person being interviewed that's just getting into something, but the host cuts them off, and they never get back to it. And I've heard myself do that on this podcast, so that's been kind of interesting to be. I've been annoyed at like the interviewer or the host for so long, and then I'm like, actually, it is kind of hard not to just interrupt people and blurt shit out. So
you get excited. Things like that. That's unfortunately how conversations go, and when you're just friends, you can come back around to it, the next hangout or 8 hours from now, and we're like, oh yeah, I forgot to ask you, did you? But yeah, it is frustrating, especially when it is like a musician or actor or something, when they're like, and then I made my best album. Dude's like, no, tell me about that dog you had. You're just like, no, come back to the
all you have to do to write an amazing song is just like, oh fuck, it never it's gone.
I don't know if you've run into this one yet too, but when you're kind of leading the conversation, a lot of times it's a topic, especially if you're mutually talking about like a band. That happens a lot where I have my answer ready of like the topic, and they just start rambling on to it, and then it doesn't come back to you. You don't get to say it's like, that's the only reason why I brought up that question, was because I wanted to talk about my opinion.
You just
gotta
interrupt them, be like, "So, what's your favorite Cure song?" And they're like, "Well, it depends on if it Friday I'm in love."
All right, next question. Yeah,
that's how my dad does it.
Yeah,
he just asks a question
that's bullshit. Here's the real answer.
Yeah, it's like I didn't even really get to say mine, but okay.
I should try that. I think that'll be good. Yeah, but that's why I like doing the openings and closing sometimes without the guest or the people I'm talking to regularly. So that's where that can come in handy, or if you especially if you jump right into the conversation and there's no like context before it, you know, you could do the little, so we talked about a lot of things, blah blah blah, and then you throw that in there. It works good.
Yeah, when I did the first one of these with you, that was the thing that hung me up the most. Is I was like, well, you got to do an intro, got to do an outro, and I was like, hey, so this is, I'm talking to Gavin Conner today. This is, and I did it like 4 times, and it was getting worse and weirder. And then I was like, well, I'll just throw it, drop it straight in. And I was like, and then I'll start doing intros. But then I've kind of like I heard this interview with Linklater, the director, a long time ago, and he was really big on. He's like, they don't need the backstory about how your dog died. Yeah. And this is just me grabbing a thing from another place and applying. I'm not saying anybody else needs to do this, but it's like, is just like you're at a restaurant, you just kind of start eavesdropping or something. And it's like wherever they started, I kind of think that can almost be compelling because then you're kind of like,
especially if it's conversation based and you're kind of not like if you're doing somebody's life story interview, then it's all like you start on the 4th movie or something. They're like, what? But,
so I've never, it's all structureless. I mean, there are certain things that I want to ask sometimes. Like I interviewed, the last podcast I did, interviewed Joey Kanizer, my songwriting hero from my hometown. I was in Nashville, did one with him. So with that one, I was like, it's going to be loose. But I do want to make sure that I don't get out to the car and be like, fuck. So I kind of did what you said, where I'll write everything out, but then I end up not really ever looking at it anyway. But the fact that I sat down for 15 minutes before and I was made the intention to think through it. I think that can have an effect on it's not as structured as yours, but it's still I'm not. It might seem like I'm just whatever, but I have spent some time. I was we got to make sure we talk about your podcast today and not just let it be too loose,
Nah,
but but because last time I asked you about your humor style, doing characters and songwriting, so it's
my imaginary comedic career doesn't exist. Let's talk about something that really exists.
Well, career. I don't know how many people on this show actually have comedy careers, but I think anybody that knows you would be like, "Well, yeah, Gavin's hilarious." I don't know.
Need some drinks first.
Do your hosts? do your podcast subscribers? Are you funny in that world?
Yeah, I don't know. And hopefully they get some humor out of it, because we kind of try to. That was, and the older ones were definitely with our buddy Donald was the co-host, and that had more of a yuck factor going. And it was intentional in a sense that it was kind of me being the straight guy talking the facts of the Cure stuff, and then he could add the comic relief, because it was, nobody wants a music podcast, especially a Cure podcast, where 2 people are super serious and the greatest fucking band ever. I mean, to a certain degree, you want them to like them, that's where it started to get a little off the rails, where Donald was bashing them a little too much too, people are like, does he even like the band? What's going on here? But and I was like, I don't know. I don't even know.
It's interesting though. You have 2 hosts that play tribute to a band, but one of them hates the band.
Yeah. It's a good angle. I think that's why it lasted as long as it did. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to keep it light, and we still goof as much as we can, with it. But at the same time, too, I'm kind of people want to hear the Cure discussion. It's not a comedy podcast. It's hopefully you're laughing a bit with us when we're talking about the 4th single off of whatever, but it's. It's not meant to be totally humorous. That's kind of the best angle, I think.
Yeah. So what would you say? What kind of percentage are you doing these days? As far as I know sometimes you'll interview a producer or somebody like that, but it seems like the defaults are either you'll do a solo one or you'll with your co-hosts.
It's weird where it's kind of balanced out with scheduling a lot more now, because the other co-host now, one's in Philly area, the other's up in New York. and everybody's got their day jobs and families, and it's just tough scheduling, as you know, with anything. It's like almost feels like a band again. We're like, all right, well, I got to get this, because I do stick to the 6. Let's see. I guess the 9 years now of doing this I haven't missed a deadline. It's been every other week since the first rough batch there. But so yeah, I always try to think ahead, so I'm not cramming it in. A lot of times I do end up where I'm editing it like the day before is the final edit, or something. But so a lot of times I kind of have it now where I'm like, this will be a good one to talk to with the other dudes. This is one I can do on my own if I need to. And then we've gotten enough core kind of people, and I'm always looking for new people to just reach out. A lot of it is if they reach out to me, and then I'm like, yeah, you come on the show, we'll do your Cure origin tale. We do that a lot where they just tell us how you got into the Cure and the personal stories attached to everything, and
that's kind of a nice angle.
So then we kind of use that as the more regular guest or just other fans, and they come on, and we've gotten to know quite a few people, so I consider them more friends now at this point too. And but we just have them on maybe like twice a year or something, and it works out good. But yeah, it is pretty, in thirds, I guess would be the divide, where I do kind of do like every 2 or so, I'll have one on standby at least that I can do myself. And the ones I do by myself tend to be shorter, of course, and more just me kind of reading off some, like an angle of some old facts. I'm not just regurgitating stuff from the bios, but at the same time, there's just some weird little angle that hasn't been addressed, but it's like kind of, it would be me reading stuff at the co-host. So I'm like, well, I might as well just do that myself, know? That works good. I think they're always better with the other dudes. So I always throw it out to them, of course, first, but if they can't make it, then it's not the end of the world, I haven't had any like serious sit down, like, we got to take this serious, boys. We can't be slacking, so it's meant to be pretty slack.
And do you find that like people tend to like, you can see like how much people are engaging with, like, do you find that like, how important is it that, are you trying to please the audience, or like, do you find if you interview like some person that's a little more like famous-y that
they definitely like that more, which is unfortunate because I don't have that much pull rumble. But those are the ones that have the higher numbers, of course, and the ones with the bigger names, because then you get our casual goofing, but we're also talking to somebody and the people we've had, I think we've, it's been sort of deliberate in a sense. I've never reached out to the band even or anything really, because one, I don't know. I don't want to ruin it. I love them so much that I don't want to be like.
You mean the current members of
the Cure? Yeah. I mean, we've talked to one guy that was producer and played with them for a bit, and so this was back in like '84. So it's been a while, and he's done enough cool other stuff where it was a full, just surprisingly awesome conversation. And Chaz, the other co-host, he set all that up. I didn't, reach out to him. I'm just too much like, I don't know. I just would rather talk to the fans and get their weird perspectives instead of trying to just get like the big name in there and stuff.
You don't have any interest in like interviewing Robert Smith?
I would, but I'm not going to sit there and send a billion emails out into the universe hoping to.
What about one email?
Maybe we'll see.
It's not what you're trying to do.
Nah,
at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, if it's worked out, great. I wouldn't turn it down, but at the same time, I don't know. I think it's partial.
You can see if like Ryan Adams or somebody wants to talk to you about the Cure.
Maybe you could pull them in. I like that angle, like, and sometimes I get
another celebrity fan
talking about them. Yeah. So that'd be good. I'd be down for that. And usually it's just the right mood in the day too. If like some days I feel more brave, I'm like, yeah, we should get that guy. He'd be great. And other days I'm like, whatever. I'll just talk to this dude down the block. Because I mean, a lot of the stuff you would ask them, you've pretty much got the answers at this point. They've been around so long. There isn't really too many big stumping questions I could throw at him that he'd be even willing to want to talk about. So I mean, it'd be cool to hear the process of like stuff that like recording the albums or writing the songs, so so that works good. I haven't really seen a huge difference. I'm sure people have their like, it's just Gavin and they skip that episode, or they can't stand the other co-host and skip that one, but at the same time,
you never really know, right?
The fact it isn't a drastic difference that I could tell from the very minimal numbers they give you on
Yeah, they don't really show you how much.
Nah, I barely can figure out what's
like,
reliable as far as anything.
It's just like they played it or they didn't. And,
yeah.
I think a play even counts as maybe you downloaded it and then deleted it.
Seconds in or something. Yeah, they could all be turning it off after the first 2 minutes.
You never really know. But I guess it's also kind of like how important is it to... I mean, that's the interesting thing about comedy is when you're doing a show, at least, you really do have a sense...
The response.
Yeah. And I think when you're new, you actually are kind of looking over their heads and thinking about what you memorized. But the more you do it, the more you really are like, okay, that person hates me. This person's like mildly amused. This person, I just saw them get up and leave right after that joke. So they didn't like that. So you can, but then, with the podcast, it is a little like, I really enjoy the conversations, but it's like, as far as like engagement and, it's kind of a black box. So, I guess I'm trying to make this.
That's why it has to feed off of what we're doing is the response, like we're
how
having fun.
It is,
And then, who knows how long that'll last or what, but it's like,
and I'm open to it. Not like as soon as this stops being fun, I'm like, it can just be like, well, I have a podcast and there's 20 episodes there. Where
exactly.
It's like, let's take a year off. And
a lot of it, like with the Cure Talk stuff, is stuff that's swimming around in my nerd head, so I'd just be like looking for somebody to say this to, and that's kind of how it started with, our friend Donald. Like we were just calling each other anyway, and half the conversation would be us talking about disintegration. Like we should just record this, and it works out good because that's. And I'm, always that way a bit. Even with music, I'm just happy to create it and have it my own little world. It should get out there more, but I've never been good at that, And I think as long as I get that one line is kind of reassuring on Spotify, where you can see it's going up each. Like if I saw the line, I was like, then I'd be like, all right, maybe I should just shut up. But I still don't really.
You're slowly growing, and it's building. That's
been
cool.
consistently getting more and more, and
in some basic way, it's
that's all you need to know, really. Because if I feel like doing it and it's not totally causing pain to anybody, then that's good.
I'm with you on like, I mean, I try to only do podcasts that I would really enjoy, and it's become this cool trick though, where it's like, it'd be maybe weird. Like it would be normal for you to just come over and talk because we've known each other for forever. But like, when I was in Nashville, like Joey was the last one I did. It's like, hey, can I come over to your house and just like sit and ask you questions for 2 hours? It's like, that's just weird. That's creepy. I have a podcast. All of a sudden you can do it. So it is kind of like anybody else that gets on board is like, is a bonus. But it's like, I really do sincerely, like I'm looking at these podcasts almost like my albums, where it's like, the reminders for me. Like, oh yeah, I had that great conversation with Gavin about his podcast. Wait, I can just actually bring that up and I can get that, I can like relive that, or, I don't know, maybe someday like one of us will be dead or something. And it's like,
I know.
Like what if our parents had a bunch of episodes? Not you.
Die.
Yeah. No one in your family ever died.
I'll go forever. I think we all know. But,
I think of your three brothers, you'll probably, not be the first to.
That's it.
But you never know. Never know.
But
it's kind of like looking at it that way. It's like, well, I enjoy doing it. I don't enjoy editing. So I am really trying to build it in a way. And it's starting to get pretty fast where it's like, I can just listen to the whole thing once and be like, all right, let's cut the 3 parts out. And then I also make a note of like, that's the part I think would make a good reel. And then I've kind of got the captioning, like I've figured out slowly how to do that faster.
That's
I'm using a little AI stuff for the captions. So then it's kind of like get the audio up and then try to just pull that one reel. And I do enjoy the reels. That's a little tedious, but it's cool. Like, to me, it's like, I still do have ambitions to do like fun, like make some kind of direct something, but like the reel is just like the perfect little.
What about just full on? Seems like more people do this now. Just full on YouTube podcast where the whole thing's video.
Yeah, and I actually have. I'm saving all of these, so I could just do that. But I'm
then
like,
you have to edit the video too.
And it's just you can see the shot is just like it's a what do you call it? Landscape. So I go in and I crop 2 portraits out for the phone, and it's just kind of like it's a cheap. It's almost like to have it be in a portrait, it's like it should really be like a movie. Like, it just,
camera 1, camera 2.
Who the fuck is actually wants to watch this? I mean, but maybe they do, because you mentioned people have asked you for that. So I've thought about it, but I kind of like I like how like there's like WTF and Joe Rogan are like the 2 big. a comedy podcast, and I do feel like WTF, like Rogan is just like, I mean, it's just
gotten
so big, and I mean, all the love and support to him, but it's not my vibe. Like the bro hangs, all the like just archery and the rich car collection stuff, and to me, it's like the video is almost like kind of synonymous with that, whereas like what like Marin and a lot of other people do is like it feels a little more like broadcasting. It feels like that's kind of what I loved first. Is I almost feel like just listening to our two voices is more mind blowing because I'm like I'm not sitting there looking at your shirt or whatever. I'm like imagining. It's like I have to dream up the pictures, and to me it's like more engaging. So it's almost like I wouldn't. For the way I enjoy it, it's richer. It's like kind of a psychedelic thing. Two voices that aren't even in the room talking, and it's like not scripted. Who knows what's going to come up? To me, like the video kind of takes away from it. But I've heard that from a few people. They're like, "Why don't you put it up?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess at some point we could." Maybe get to episode 50 and do that, but I haven't really been sold. I haven't heard a benefit that would justify.
It's like a music video too, where it's like they're only going to find something that they like don't like if you see more.
You're giving them more.
It's like everyone's like, that guy's hat
to hate.
Stupid. What is it? Is he really? What is he wearing that for? Does he always look like that when he chuckles? It's like, oh.
There's some vibe where it's like we talked about this last time, like the radio and like broadcasting. That I feel like there's something. Like listening to like an NPR show is like just cooler. This is more my taste. And
did you listen to a lot of talk radio growing up? I don't know.
Like in the 2000s when I moved here, I just found NPR and just left it on, and that was still the only, until podcasts came along, it was like Fresh Air and This American Life, and now I don't listen to those anymore because there's like a million other options. But to me, I was like, wow, my dream was like to be on Fresh Air and be interviewed. But now, just in the last few months, I'm like, well, I can just make my own Fresh Air, and I can be the like not interviewer but host, conversationalist, and so I'm kind of living out some weird broadcasting dream
kind of thing because I guess I indirectly listened to a lot of it, just like driving around in cars. Like my dad always had on like those like call or go ahead kind of shows, like whether it be political talk or whatever, and then everywhere in Northern Virginia you got to commute forever, so at a certain point you just get sick of every CD you had in the car and put on like whatever talk radio was on, even if you hated it. Half the time it was because you hated it, oh god, I can't stand this guy, and you just listen to it for like 3 hours straight. Or like Love Line was big in the into the 90s there and stuff. So
but it was still kind of interesting, right? Even if you hated it, you're like,
I guess, I don't know. It was like that Rush Limbaugh factor or something where you're like, I never really listened to him, but I've heard people say that just because he was so repugnant, people would be like, oh. I've done that too, actually.
Stern was like the other side of that coin, I think.
Yeah, there's a Christian radio thing that sometimes when I'm waiting in the pickup line, I'll put that on just to like kind of laugh at. There was this one dude, this Prager dude. Oh, God, it was so repugnant. And I was just like sitting there like cursing at the radio, waiting to pick up Henson in the car. It's like, why am I doing this though? Some kind of masochist thing or something. But so it could be, it's weird though, but I do like just kind of hearing people ramble, even if it's not a podcast. Sometimes it's better when it's on the radio. You just picture them all in the booths.
It's like, it's kind of old timey. It's like, I mean, sometimes people say my recordings sound lo-fi, but to me, I'm just trying to make them sound in the room, and that's like that to me. That's how like Motown and the early Stones records and stuff sound. So this is like, even though it's on the internet, to me it's like I like the timeless vibes, and I'm trying not to do too much of like what everybody's doing now. And something about audio only.
Making it all flashy and
it's what's up, honey? Come on in. I actually need to pee, so this is a good time to take a.
All right.